The whisper cut through the glittering ballroom like a blade. That woman is here to serve drinks tonight, not to donate millions. Dr. Vanessa Carter, the first Black president of Harrington University, stood quietly in the center of the grand hall. She wore a deep emerald evening gown and held a glass of champagne, surrounded by hundreds of wealthy donors celebrating the university's 150th anniversary. Yet somehow, no one seemed to recognize her. The ballroom of the historic Harrington estate shimmered under massive crystal chandeliers. 500 guests in designer gowns and tuxedos mingled across the polished marble floors. The evening's highlight was supposed to be a historic $25 million announcement that would reshape the university's future. What none of them realized was that the woman they kept mistaking for staff was the one about to make that announcement. Vanessa adjusted the pearl necklace around her neck, a simple gift from her late mother, who had once worked as a hotel housekeeper so her daughter could attend law school. Now, decades later, Vanessa oversaw a university endowment worth $3 billion. But in this room, she was practically invisible. "Excuse me," a sharply dressed woman said, tapping Vanessa's shoulder. "I need another glass of champagne, and tell the kitchen the appetizers are getting cold." Vanessa looked up calmly. The woman giving the order was Margaret Harrington, a member of the university's founding family, and a board trustee who had sat across from Vanessa in multiple board meetings. Yet she clearly had no idea who she was speaking to. "I'll pass that along," Vanessa replied politely. As Margaret walked away, Vanessa opened the Notes app on her phone. She had been documenting everything. Entry number 7, mistaken for catering staff by board trustee. Her documentation was deliberate. Vanessa had spent years learning that real institutional change requires evidence. Across the room, the board chairman, Richard Caldwell, stood surrounded by wealthy donors, speaking loudly over the orchestra. "Our new president is certainly a modern choice," he said with a smile, "though traditions like ours shouldn't be rushed." Vanessa recognized the coded language immediately. She had spent 25 years in academia, learning how powerful people communicated without saying certain things directly. She quietly recorded the conversation, not out of anger, out of strategy. Moments later, a real waiter approached, a young staff member named Marcus. "Dr. Carter," he said respectfully. Vanessa smiled warmly. "Marcus, how's your daughter's college application going?" His face lit up. "She got accepted yesterday, ma'am. Full scholarship." "That's wonderful," Vanessa said. "Tell her congratulations from me." In many ways, the staff knew the university president better than the board did. Then Vanessa's phone buzzed, a message from her chief of staff. "Chairman Caldwell moved your speech to 10:15 p.m. Donors want familiar faces to open the program. Should we push back?" Vanessa typed a short reply. "No, let them underestimate." Originally, she was supposed to give the opening address at 8 p.m. Now, her speech had been moved to the very end of the evening. After dinner, after dessert, after half the crowd would likely leave. The message was clear. Symbolic diversity was acceptable. Actual authority was negotiable. Later, as dinner began, Vanessa walked to table 1, the president's table. Her nameplate gleamed in elegant calligraphy. She sat down and waited. 5 minutes passed, then 7. Every other table filled quickly, but no one sat at the president's table. Guests simply walked past it. Eventually, an elderly couple approached. "Dr. Carter?" the woman asked gently. "I'm Patricia Lynn, class of 72. This is my husband, Robert. May we sit with you?" Vanessa smiled. "Please." Patricia leaned closer. "I've been watching people avoid this table all night. I thought you might appreciate the company." She paused. "My granddaughter attends Harrington on the financial aid program you expanded. You changed our family's future." Vanessa thanked her quietly. Sometimes allies appeared exactly when they were needed. Finally, hours later, the chairman returned to the stage microphone. And before we conclude tonight's celebration, he announced, we'll hear a brief word from the administration. Not a presidential address, just a brief word. Vanessa stood and walked toward the stage, but just before the steps, a young waiter stepped in front of her. Sorry, ma'am, he said nervously. The stage is only for speakers. The ballroom fell silent. Vanessa looked at him calmly. I am a speaker. The board chairman quickly approached. I believe there's been some confusion, he said, with polite condescension. Vanessa turned toward him. For the first time all night, she allowed her authority to show. Mr. Caldwell, she said clearly, there is no confusion. Her voice carried across the ballroom. My name is Dr. Vanessa Carter. I am the president of this university. And I will be addressing this audience tonight. The room went completely silent. Vanessa stepped onto the stage and approached the microphone. Good evening, she began. For those of you who didn't recognize me earlier tonight, my name is Dr. Vanessa Carter, the 16th president of Harrington University. She paused. I spent this entire evening being mistaken for catering staff, questioned by security, and ignored at an event hosted in my own institution's name. Gasps rippled through the audience. This isn't about personal offense, she continued calmly. This is about institutional blindness. Vanessa held up her phone. Tonight alone, I documented 12 separate incidents where people in this room failed to recognize the university president because she did not match their expectation of what leadership looks like. Then she tapped the screen. Behind her, the ballroom's giant LED screens lit up. Charts, data, evidence. Everything she had been quietly collecting for months. And suddenly the entire room realized something important. They hadn't been underestimating the president. They had been underestimating the most prepared person in the room. The giant screens behind Dr. Vanessa Carter glowed softly, illuminating the silent ballroom. Charts appeared first, simple graphs, clean data, hard evidence. For a moment, no one spoke. Over the past 6 months, Vanessa continued calmly, my office has conducted a quiet institutional audit. Another slide appeared. It showed statistics about hiring patterns, board nominations, donor influence, and leadership visibility inside Harrington University. The purpose of tonight's gala, Vanessa said, was to celebrate our history. She paused. But history is only valuable when we learn from it. Guests shifted uneasily in their seats. Near the front, Chairman Richard Caldwell forced a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. Vanessa clicked the remote again. A new slide appeared. Leadership demographics. Last 150 years. A long row of identical silhouettes filled the screen. White, male, wealthy. For a century and a half. The visual spoke louder than any speech. Tradition, Vanessa said gently, is not the same thing as progress. Across the ballroom, phones were now fully raised. Donors were recording. Staff members stood still along the walls. Even the musicians had stopped playing. Vanessa continued. Earlier tonight, many of you mistook me for catering staff. A quiet ripple of embarrassment moved across the room. I want to be clear, she said. There is nothing wrong with serving drinks. She gestured toward Marcus and the other staff members standing near the back. These people work harder than most of us in this room. Marcus looked stunned to suddenly be part of the speech. What concerns me, Vanessa continued, is that so many people here could not imagine that the woman holding a champagne glass might also be the president. She let the words settle. At table 3, Margaret Harrington stared at the floor. Vanessa turned to the final slide. The words were large enough for everyone to read. The future of Harrington University. This brings me to tonight's announcement, Vanessa said. The $25 million initiative you were invited here to hear about. The audience leaned forward, Chairman Caldwell's expression tightened. He clearly hadn't expected this moment to arrive like this. Vanessa smiled slightly. Earlier this year, my office secured a $25 million leadership transformation fund. The ballroom erupted into murmurs. Vanessa raised a hand gently, and the room quieted again. The program will expand scholarships for first-generation students. Another slide appeared. Fund leadership fellowships for underrepresented scholars. Another slide. And restructure how board nominations are selected. Now the room was completely silent. That last line landed like thunder. Vanessa looked directly toward the board table. For the first time in Harrington's history, she said evenly, board nominations will include faculty, alumni, and student representation. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Chairman Caldwell's jaw tightened, but Vanessa continued without hesitation. Because leadership should not only reflect tradition. Her voice grew firmer. It should reflect the future. Applause started slowly. One pair of hands, then another. Patricia Lynn stood first. She clapped loudly, her husband joining beside her. Soon the sound spread across the room. Students working the event began clapping. Staff followed, then younger alumni. Finally, even many donors joined in. The applause grew louder, longer, stronger. Vanessa looked out across the ballroom. Hours earlier, she had been invisible in this room. Now, every single person was looking at her, not as catering staff, not as an unexpected guest, but exactly as what she was, the president of Harrington University, and the person who had just changed its future.